When I see people who have mold, they typically also have Lyme or EBV, Candida overgrowth,
Fibromyalgia,
things like this. Yeah, they all stack up, and it's because the body is so out of balance due to toxicity that once they detox, the body's able to fight back. And so we see a lot of these conditions reversed. I stay healthy from doing sauna daily, and I do think that people need to really understand and appreciate better the power of sauna.
Yeah. So is that around, I guess, is that around the time when you learned that infrared saunas were more effective in detoxing than traditional saunas?
Exactly the same time, in fact, because we realized too that, well, in order to produce that sebaceous sweat in a dry sauna, which tends to run at 180 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit, you're in that sauna multiple times. You're in and out like every 15 minutes to 20 minutes because you just can't tolerate that kind of heat that long. So you have to cool down for 5 to 10. And all those repeated cycles of heating and cooling eventually gets the core temperature to the point where that sebaceous oil gland is melting the sebum and, you're getting the full effect. So in the 5-hour day program, that was not a big deal. But in the infrared version, or once we realized that it was the last 2 hours of the original method that were the most effective, once we realized that, we realized, well, we need to speed up the process of sweating, the sebaceous sweat. So that was where I learned about Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt and how important the infrared saunas are. And we haven't really looked back. Although people can do the program with a dry sauna, and we have a method for them. But just know that infrared saunas are the best. And also, I would point out that sauna blankets are not going to be effective for this.
Interesting.
Portable saunas can be, though. Yeah, portable saunas, there's a couple I recommend. But the thing is that if somebody is just trying to start off with this and they're thinking low budget, stay away from the sauna blankets. And in fact, steam saunas would not be recommended either. This really works best with far infrared saunas. If you have a full spectrum, that's fine. But just know we're only caring about the far infrared wavelengths. And I'm sure by now people understand that we resonate with the far infrared wavelengths at around 9.4 microns is optimal. Is this information that I think your audience might be aware of?
But, absolutely.
Just know that, so the infrared saunas, they're basically tuned to between 6 and 12 to 14 microns to cover that range. So we basically now know that when we shorten the program, we need to increase the speed of the sebaceous sweat. And also, we know now that rebound doesn't just end after those 2 hours. It actually has about a 6-hour curve. And in fact, this is not something that I expect people to really be able to follow, but this is the rebound chart right here, if you can see that. So it's actually important to watch some of our videos.
What are those two lines? That big hump right there, is that?
So that's. Yeah, the big hump is the niacin part of it, and the white squares are the control. So briefly, this was a glucose study that was done on women back in 2000 by Wang et al., and they measured the free fatty acid concentrations in the blood every half hour over a 6-hour period. And you can see after about 2.5 hours where there's been a depressed state of lipolysis, which is what you're looking at. Lipolysis is the breakdown of triglycerides into free fatty acids and glycerol. So that's kind of a real Reader's Digest condensed version of this. But the point is that after 2.5 hours, the body overshoots. It's kind of like you've stretched a rubber band down. That's the lowest peak, and then you shoot it up in the air after the niacin wears off. And you get 4 times normal levels of free fatty acid concentrations in the blood, and that lipid mobilization is creating the excessive liberation of toxins from fat. So that's an important thing to note. But we're not just dealing with fat-soluble toxins, by the way. This is another interesting thing to note. So glyphosate and gadolinium are both water-soluble. So
Roundup, right?
They are winding up in fat. Say again?
Roundup? Is that
Roundup? Glyphosate from Roundup. Yeah. So those are water soluble, and the liver cannot deal with them. So what happens is, because the toxins are already in the fat and they've affected the cell membranes, the water soluble toxins are also winding up in fat. And Dr. Harold Zeliger, somebody who I've been working with on an oxidative stress index questionnaire, has written plenty of papers on why this effect occurs. And so it's amazing to see that all the different toxins that the body can't deal with are winding up in the body. There's very few things, believe it or not, that are actually going to have a half-life that's going to get them out of the system as fast as they think they do. Most toxins are going to wind up storing, in fact, drug chemicals residues, from not just the pharmaceutical kind, but the recreational kind, like LSD, for example, can store way over 50 years in fat. This is something, in fact,
I've heard of that.
When I was,
People tripping later in life when they took a dose when they were younger.
I have to ask people when they come to my center, hey, have you ever done LSD? Because if they have, I'll tell them, you're going to get your money's worth because it'll probably re-stimulate because we're going to get it out of the fat and back into circulation, and those dopamine receptors are going to have a field day. So,
yep, you got that right.
It's very fascinating to see what goes on when people go through this program.
Yeah. To go back, so I'm glad you brought up the far infrared wavelength. So I get a lot of people that ask me, you see near infrared saunas, you see far infrared full spectrum. And I tell them far infrared is in full spectrum, and far infrared is the workhorse of the wavelength. That's what the primary detoxification method is. And then when you're talking about the microns, one of the reasons of going with a good quality infrared sauna is you could get some cheap heater that's anywhere from 3 to 25 microns. Well, if you get a heater that's closer to that 9.4 microns, you're going to have a much more effective session. You're not going to have to use it as long, and it's just going to overall be a lot better and more effective in general.
Exactly. In fact, you brought up the near infrared saunas too. I don't like near infrared in the word sauna together. To me, they're not a sauna.
Exactly.
In fact, you hear the traditional sauna people, the dry sauna people, say, well, infrared is not a sauna at all. But no, near infrared is truly not. And they love to argue it penetrates deeper. So, it's not going to resonate with the water molecules in the cells to create vibrational heat, which is how we heat up. And it's not like a microwave. But the thing is that if it's not going to resonate with those water molecules, it's not going to generate heat. So the only heat people feel from their, near infrared saunas is because they're using usually some form of a heat lamp. And so you're getting essentially a dry sauna. And if you wanted to do our program with one of those types of saunas, you would literally have to follow the dry sauna version, which takes about 90 to 120 minutes of total sauna time.
Yeah. Much more effective with far infrared. And so when I first got into saunas 10 years ago, it seemed like people knew more about near infrared and those lamps and stuff like that. And as the industry's progressed and the more knowledge that people have come out, it's pretty rare I hear about it. But I do once in a while, I still hear people be like, oh, I'm looking at this. And then I got to go through exactly how you just described it.
Yeah, Dr. Wilson, I think, is the reason why people are thinking of those near infrared lamps. He wrote a book many, many decades ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've in fact, like I said, we were using dry saunas for 36 years because we didn't even know that far infrared saunas were a thing. In fact, I don't even think they were a thing until probably the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
So they've been out for about 40 years. However, it's really taken off in the past 20 years. And it's one of those things that the more people know about them, the more people that have one, use one, like the proof is in the pudding. You feel like $1 million bucks after you use it, and it's great for our health. So then you tell your friends about it, your neighbors, and now it's at a point where it's as popular as it's ever been. And what's cool about it is this isn't some random fad that so many times we get tricked on and purchasing some supplement or something like that and then find out that it was just nothing or the placebo. What I love about it is you go in that thing right there and you come out an hour later, 45 minutes, 75 minutes, without a shadow of a doubt, you feel a lot better. It is a noticeable difference in how better we feel. And that's what makes me so passionate about it. And hence this podcast exists.
Yes. And thank you for your podcast too, because absolutely getting the word out there is essential. Even though I do resell saunas or I'm an affiliate for sauna manufacturers, the thing is, I don't care where you get your sauna as long as it's able to do this detox, because I'm very passionate about helping others with this. For me, when I went through the program, I was a convert, but one thing I didn't recognize was the environmental toxicity issue, because my reason for going through it was completely different than most people that are going through it today. So For many years, I wasn't looking at it from the standpoint of environmental toxicity, but that thing in the back of my mind of all these different people who've gone through the program and we're seeing their chronic conditions reversed, that became kind of like where the impetus for me to move forward with writing the book and bringing this to the public came in. But there was a very special moment that happened to my wife that really kicked me in the butt. And that was the fact that during this period where I wasn't thinking about environmental toxicity being the problem of health issues, but behind, basically the root cause of health issues, the thing is that my wife had basically hyperthyroidism. And her primary care practitioner, which, keep this in mind, my father's fourth generation medical doctor. So he, his great grandfather and grandfather were both holistic practitioners, but Rockefeller medicine kicked in, and my father actually literally says that he and his father were both trained to be legalized drug pushers. I'm glad he was in occupational medicine and didn't deal with the big pharma side very much. But anyway, so we were basically, white coat blinded, Funny story, my father, he would never wear the stethoscope around his neck like you see in pictures.
I hated doing it as
anyway.
I didn't like doing that as a paramedic either. But when I first went through school and I first got out on the rigs, it's the cool thing to do when you first get out of school. And then after you realize there's a lot of calls I don't use this on, so why am I wearing it?
Right. But my wife took the primary care practitioner's word that having radioactive iodine therapy to kill her thyroid was the right way to go. I was with her 100%, backing her, and then we realized that she wasn't getting any better. She was getting a lot worse and now dependent on her thyroid medication. So I started to do the research that I should have done ahead of time of Dr. Google and found that if we had just changed our diet and stopped eating the prepackaged processed convenience fast foods and eat whole foods that are not overcooked and, make sure they're organic and all that, that was one step. The second step was to detox because she was probably dealing with xenoestrogens or endocrine disrupting chemicals. And, that we have fluoride in the water around here. And we needed to have more iodine to replace that fluoride. But anyway, the thing is that at that time, my father and his crew had, moved everything from Sacramento to the New York Rescue Workers Detox Project. And they never came back with the detox program. So there was a period of time where we didn't have the detox program in our clinic. And so it was at that very moment that my wife, had to go through this radioactive iodine therapy. And so it was a real kick in the butt to realize that if we had used the detox program with her, that her health would not have degraded. And in fact, she today is mostly wheelchair bound, and she can hobble on a cane, but just short distances, like to the car. But for the most part, and it wasn't just radioactive iodine therapy. There's a lot of other things, and one of the things that is also something I'm studying in great detail with Dr. Scott Schroeder, which is a name people should look up, is Galvanism, where the separate metals in the body. There's different types of metals in the body, which many people have: screws, plates, titanium teeth, things like that. We can turn ourselves into a biological battery, and that's going to create currents and voltages and things that can trigger like tremors and trigger all kinds of different types of conditions. So, and the galvanism also breaks down the metal, like the titanium plates, and those become basically ionic metals that create reactive oxygen species, or ROS, and create all kinds of oxidative stress issues. So the thing is that the problem with multiple metals in the body is a problem she also has. So we're finding that by listening to the conventional medicine wisdom that we've basically destroyed her health. And so my passion now is to help educate people about the problems out there and how to overcome some of them. In fact, gadolinium from MRIs counts as one of those separate metals in the system. And so by at least detoxing the gadolinium, we can improve how somebody's symptomology looks, because another issue that we find with metals in the body is there may be allergies or sensitivities. For example, titanium isn't pure titanium, it has nickel, and there are a lot of people who have nickel allergies and don't know it. And nickel, it can be from chocolate. It could be from all kinds of different sources. So yeah, this is an area that I've been working with Dr. Scott Schroeder he's writing a paper, and I'm helping him with using AI to analyze the data. So my background, by the way, is IT. I started off as the computer guy, if you recall. And so, my strengths are all over the board when it comes to technology, the Detox program, and I love working with people like Scott and Harold Zelliger. So it really is teaching me a lot more, which is important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, for a guy like me that uses the sauna every day for 10 years, a guy like or a woman like my wife who's been doing sauna and hot yoga for 15 years, obviously we're going to get a benefit from going through your process and your sauna detox with niacin protocol. How is there a certain how often would you recommend it for someone like me and my wife?
You guys are probably in a healthier space than most people I work with. You probably could get away with just doing it once, but I would consider doing it twice. There's a 2-week break between programs, minimum. So the first week allows your body to return to homeostasis, or excuse me, to reset niacin, and the 2-week off period allows your body to return to homeostasis. As you have to consider that we're liberating toxins at 3 times normal levels, doing heat stress of sauna, exercise for a lot of people is kind of new because there is 20 to 30 minutes of low impact aerobic exercise involved. But the thing is that the homeostasis is going to be important after about 30 days because you're in a more heightened state of the sympathetic or flight mode, of the parasympathetic to sympathetic modes. So the thing is that for a person to go through this program more than once, do a minimum of 2 weeks off, but you can space it up like 45 days if you need to.
Yeah.
But fit it into your schedule. And it is okay to go from a morning to an afternoon or an evening session, but it's best to be consistent with the time for the fact that it'll help to make it a routine, which helps the commitment level. So, and then also, our books on a detoxification using niacin that you mentioned. Unfortunately, my camera is backwards now, but just know that there's actually even more updates than what's in the second edition. So somebody who's already purchased the book or the Kindle version can go to our website and register to be able to download the most updated protocol guidebook. So I recommend that if you haven't already done so, that you register on our website to get that. You can even purchase just the updated protocol guidebook, which has everything you need as far as understanding what's needed to do the program, because we have to replenish the good stuff with the bad. So things like, or not with the bad, you're losing the good stuff with the bad.
That was my next question. Is there any vitamins that you need to add to it? Is there any precautions you have to take? That's kind of where I was going to head to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and touch that now. So we do sweat out a lot of electrolytes and minerals. That's a big one. There are some fat-soluble vitamins, too, that we need to replace. But the thing is that the electrolytes are the main thing, and that includes potassium salt and what are known as plasma electrolytes or cell salts. So those are trace minerals. But the other thing, too, is we have a multi-mineral tablet. In fact, there's a kit that we offer that is essentially most everything needed for the program, because there's oils, lecithin, evening primrose oil, the different niacin doses, like 100, 500, and 1,000 milligram doses, so that you can actually dose correctly. And then there's a CalMag beverage. It's calcium and magnesium, which is blended with apple cider vinegar. Just briefly, calcium is very alkaline, and you need to reduce the pH to make it more available to the tissues. But there's some other things, too, that if somebody's had gadolinium or other types of conditions that we know of, may need to have some tailoring to the program. It's not necessarily one size fits all from the book. In fact, I do remote coaching because most of the people I work with who are on my Facebook group, they usually find me through the Facebook group, which is the same name as the book. They basically almost all need to have some kind of tailoring to the program because there are certain conditions that stack. So gadolinium would be one thing we automatically know that we have to alter. There's some things that need to be added and some things that need to be subtracted. And then also, what if they have Lyme disease, or what if they have mold infections? Yeah, things like that, they can stack. So plenty of people also don't have a gallbladder, and the oils would probably not be a good idea for them. So it's best to work with somebody like me, who I'm a co-developer of the program. So basically the most knowledgeable about it, actively, being a practitioner. So it's helpful to work with somebody like me on doing this. But anyway, the kit is $230 currently plus shipping, and it contains a lot of stuff. So it's very important to consider that. We found that it saves about $100 if you were to try to source individual items. And then the binders are not included because binders are specific to different toxicities. Sure. For example, mold has binders that we would not normally use on a program where somebody's not affected by mycotoxins. So there's going to be things like enteros gel or bentonite clay that may be needed for that kind of exposure. But anyway, there's a bunch of different things that people need to be aware of, and that's why I train detoxinations to be able to do the program and deliver it properly.
Nice. So a lot of people use it for specific purposes. A lot of people use it just for detox in general. In short, on average, how long before I start to feel better after using the program? Is it something that I need? You did say some people need to use it multiple times. Is it one of those things where I get done using it and I notice a real big difference? Or is it something that takes a little bit of time?
So this brings us back to the minimum 2-week break between programs. So let's talk about that a little bit more in depth, because when you're in this program, you are in that heightened state of sympathetic mode. Most people, especially on the first round, will not feel like they got any benefit from it during the program. However, during the break, when the body returns to homeostasis, any wins, gains, or benefits will become more obvious. So, but it tends to be the second program where people really do get like the aha, I feel wonderful kind of feeling. And also, I mentioned in phenomena that I reached back in those early days. I have to warn people that this is an elusive goal, and about 20% of the people we've ever put through the program for 43 years have ever accomplished in phenomena that we know of. And the reason I even started looking into the gut is because now we have a good understanding of the probable cause for most people not hitting the end phenomena is because of a leaky gut, which is bigger than most people realize. More people have conditions related to leaky gut than they could possibly imagine. I mean, literally, one of the worst things about living in today's world is all the different ways these toxins are affecting the gut microbiome.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really bad. But our program is going to improve a lot of this. In fact, I've mentioned Lyme disease. We actually don't detox the bacteria, but we are taking away their fuel source. They eat the heavy metals.
I was wondering about that.
And then they excrete their toxic waste, and then when they die off, they're toxic. So the thing is that once the body gets detoxed, then we see things like opportunistic pathogens, Lyme, for example, and others that are going to, basically be dealt with better by the immune response. Once the body gets detoxed, then we see things like opportunistic pathogens, Lyme, for example, and others that are going to, basically be dealt with better by the immune response. And so when I see people who have mold, they typically also have Lyme or EBV, Candida overgrowth,
fibromyalgia,
SIBO, things like this. Yeah, they all stack up, and it's because the body is so out of balance due to toxicity that once they detox, the body's able to fight back. And so we see a lot of these conditions reverse. And now that we're including gut health in the process, and I've gone through, his name is going to escape me for the moment, but the guy who is actually known as it's Kiran Krishnan is the name. He is the guy that I've just gone through his training course. And we're starting to implement that into the program because it's obvious that if people don't have a working gut terrain, that their detox is going to get hampered. I'm actually doing a show tomorrow that is going to be talking about this in greater detail. I do a Tuesday Zoom in with Daniel Rue. This episode will probably air after that, but just be aware that it's a replay that somebody can watch.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely look out for that. My mom, so like I said, I'm 39. My mom, 35 years ago, when I was just growing up, would hammer me on gut health. You got to take care of your gut health. You got to eat good foods and take certain vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. And she would always say it all starts in the gut. And back then, not as many people took to it, and it seemed like it was this far off idea that wasn't very popular. And nowadays, when I see all the research that have come out about gut health and all the evidence and the studies she's been right the whole time, and I love it. I love my mom for that and for a number of reasons. But that leads into my question. What are some of the other health benefits that you've seen with your clients receive through going through the protocol and detoxing that maybe they're not going through it for, but that they receive as more or less a side effect of the program?
Yeah, for a lot of people, they'll eventually see a lot of the same benefits that I got from when I hit End Phenomena. But essentially, you're going to feel much better, have more energy. You're going to find that like body scent improves, so you don't have the BO anymore. Your breath is going to improve. You're going to find that mental clarity is really truly the most amazing thing with this. Memory improves, but I have to also mention the fact that there are well over 40 different conditions or categories of conditions even that the medical community has no known etiology for or cause. These are ones that are non-communicable and non-genetic, and they're pretty much all linked to environmental toxicity.
Yeah.
And in one of my videos, which is called A Deeper Dive into Detoxination, it's a part 2 video of a 2-part series. In that one, I specifically show those different conditions, and I've personally seen about 80% of those resolved in at least 1 or 2 people per condition. But I'm in no place now to do studies, controlled studies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But back when we were able to, we were dealing with whatever known toxicity we were being called out for. In fact, one of the very first studies was a study that was done on capacitor workers in Sebaceous, Slovenia, who were exposed to PCBs, which was used in the capacitor manufacturing. It's basically I'm sure it was an electrolyte or something inside the capacitor. But anyway, the thing is that this one woman was the reason why the team got called out to Sebaceous, Slovenia was because this woman was bedridden for 20 hours a day, and she had some oozing of material from a part of her body. We won't get into too much detail, but the thing is that she was the control, like the quality control manager for this company, and her job was to literally barehanded take the capacitors off the conveyor belt, and if they did not leak PCBs into her bare hand, it would go into the good bucket. It leaked PCBs and go into the bad bucket. And so her, on the hands and feet, we don't have these sebaceous oil glands that provide a barrier. The hands and feet absorb most of the toxins that we actually are dealing with, especially the feet. So if you're walking around and you think you're walking around in grass to get grounded, but that grass has been sprayed with some kind of pesticide.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right.
Anyway, the thing is that her case was one of the 2 studies that were made, but there were 16 of these capacitor workers that went through the program, and they wanted to make it a study because they knew they were looking at PCBs. So they literally had to take fat biopsies where they took a 6-inch biopsy needle, shoved them in the rumps, pre and post detox of these patients, and measured the PCB concentrations in the fat content, but also compared that with the blood serum tests. And what they found was that the fat content was 200 times greater than blood serum tests could even begin to reveal. And that actually shocked the toxicology world back in 1986. And that paper, I believe, was cited in at least 25 other papers, as well as it was mentioned in a allergy medical textbook. So that one was a pretty important study. But the woman in question, after 5 days on the program, was starting to recover, and that issue of her oozing of material, which was PCBs, was also resolved. But she went through a full, in that time, 21-day complement of the program. Anyway, that was actually one of the first times that they ever did discover that, firstly, the tests that are available to the public are really insufficient for doing anything as far as like body burden reductions. So it's unfortunate in today's world that we don't have any way of showing the body burden reductions from a regular, like a doctor's data or Mosaic DX, which was Great Plains Labs. If you were to do a urine test or stool test or something like that, more than likely what you'll find if you do one pre-detox, even if like a provoked urine test where they give you EDTA or some kind of chelator to help bring out more material, what you'll find is you get a baseline, and people want to see after a detox that they've reduced. But what happens is the body starts to detox much better than it ever could because of the detox program. So these levels shoot up very high, and we go yay, but clients go because it looks scary to them. And actually this effect lasts for 4 months that we know of. Studies have been done to show that the detox occurs even 4 months after a program. So the body's still eliminating it at higher levels than normal. And so, I never recommend these urine tests anymore to people.
Yeah.
Stool tests are also the same. They're showing that the body's eliminating, but there is a point, especially like I mentioned, the nurse with 32 gadolinium injections, she actually did monitor her stools for a long period of time. And after she did, I think the 5th, maybe the 6th round of the program, she was definitely starting to see that the concentrations of gadolinium in her stool were very much lowered, and she was able to actually show that her body had pretty much cleaned up of gadolinium. Now, I can't say that we ever get everything out,
Yeah, right.
But best reduction we've ever seen.
So have they done testing on like nuclear radiation poisoning and stuff like that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's a really good question, because one of the earliest projects, which wasn't really a study, but it was an early project, were the children of Chernobyl. So there was I can't remember the exact count, but it was a large number of children went through the program, and their quality of life improved dramatically. And I know that they were doing some radioactive studies with cesium-137, but the thing is that I don't believe that we have a published study that I can draw from for this. But we do know that the program is able to detox, radioactive elements as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. So now I just want to get into your personal sauna use a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. So you have a sauna. You've been using a sauna almost every day since you were 10 years old. So how often do you use the sauna? I guess you already answered that, but give me your sauna routine. What time of the day, what temperature do you like, that type of stuff?
Okay. And I do want to correct you. I haven't been using sauna since I was 10 years old every day. I certainly, after my wife's experience, and we realized that saunas were going to be an important fact. In fact, in 2014, we discovered that we could reduce the program to a 2-hour period. That's when I got my first far infrared sauna. So I've been using it basically since 2014. But,
gotcha.
To be honest, I own about 4 saunas right now, maybe 5. But because I do like to test them. I like to see, like I have a sauna blanket, for example. I literally have tested them. They do not produce sebaceous sweat. Sorry.
Yeah.
But my favorite sauna is a 3-person sauna, and the manufacturer is no longer in business. So it's a sauna that is kind of unique, and that's why I love it. It is a far infrared sauna though, but it uses tiles instead of the standard, carbon ceramic. Literally the kind of tiles you would find in an industrial capacity where they've got painted items coming down a conveyor belt and they're trying to dry them. And the reason I like that sauna is because my understanding is that there's, firstly, the nasal cavity is the coolest part of the body, and it's where most opportunistic pathogens are going to start to thrive. And if you have temperatures above 133 degrees Fahrenheit, you can start to break down materials that are trying to thrive in that area. So I like to breathe in the hot air from the sauna, and it's much easier with the tiles than it is the others. So, because I do have others, I know that I can get that done better. Anyway, so my routine, like I start my day with clients at 9 o'clock. And so I know 2 hours ahead of time I need to preheat the sauna for 30 minutes and then do a 30-minute sauna, and then I'll take my shower and get dressed and possibly have breakfast or something along those lines.
Cold shower?
Yes, because I'm the first one of the household to use the shower. And as you possibly know, with water heaters being on one end of the house and the shower on the other end of the house, it takes a while for that hot water to get to the shower. So, it's a very cold shower I like to take, and then it warms up so I can shave and all that good stuff. But the favorite temperature for me is 140. And I also like to point out to people that that doesn't mean you should do 140. It just means that that's my favorite temperature. And one of the most important things to keep in mind is, where is the temperature sensor? So manufacturers can put them on the ceiling, and they can put them on the sides. And so it depends kind of where that sensor is. And I do have an analog thermometer in my sauna, so I can actually compare the two. So, but 140 is where I set mine. And I always tell people that, whatever the lowest temperature that can produce a good profuse sweat in an infrared sauna will more than likely be generating a sebaceous sweat. So if 130 is able to get you sweating, and you're producing a profuse sweat, then you're...
I call it river sweating. Sweating like there's a constant river flowing off of our body. It's constant stream from our elbow to the floor.
Right. In fact, there was a funny story that nobody's been able to replicate, so I don't know if this is going to be valid for most people, but there was a day where I had a paper towel that I'd been using for something, and I cleaned my glasses anyway. Anyway, it fell on the floor, and I wasn't paying any attention to it, but it laid out flat right below my face, because I like to lean forward. I have a little tray on my glass door where I put my iPhone, and I can watch videos and things like that, podcasts like yours. And then, so what happened was that I was dripping from my face, which, there's a lot of sebaceous oil glands in the forehead. That's why most acne tends to be up here. Anyway, I was dripping like crazy on this paper towel and didn't even notice. So the next day I came to use the sauna, and I was drinking out of my water glass, which I always carry a 16-ounce water glass in the sauna with me, or yeah, I always have that with me. But anyway, the thing is that I took a drink and a drop came down my chin and landed on top of that paper towel, and I just looked down to see where it fell, and I noticed it was still as a little water bubble on top of the paper towel. And I picked up the paper towel, and it was a little crispier than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I had sweated out so much of the sebum, the sebaceous sweat, that the towel had absorbed all that, dried out, and it became basically coated. And so the water didn't immediately absorb into the paper towel. And I thought, I'll tell people to test to see if they're getting the sebaceous sweat. Well, it turns out people are starting to wipe off their arms and stuff with their paper towels, and the next day they come back and it didn't work. Well, it dawned on me it's because the sweat had to come off the face where there's a lot of the sebaceous oil glands, and so it was probably not a good test for others to try. Anyway, it was interesting to see that though, because I'd never actually seen what the dried sebaceous sweat looked like, and it was brown.
Yeah.
And so maybe some of the stuff that you were seeing with your towels is actually the brown sebaceous sweat, but we do see plenty of colorful towels. There's one that I love to talk about, which is the meth cop, who was involved with 180 meth labs, actually more than 180 meth labs. And so during the raids, they could in a melee and things would be thrown around like the solvents and the chemicals. And so, and it's nothing like Breaking Bad, people. So anyway, the thing is that the meth cop, his towels, ever since he got to his target niacin dose, his towels were always coming out either a dark tan, bluish, purple, and then some days it would be a tie-dye of all these different colors.
Oh,
and,
wow, that's
there's
crazy.
I got pictures of these on my website and in the updated protocol guidebook. But we identified the bluish-purple stain as Drano. So the primary ingredient of Drano is sodium hydroxide. So he was sweating out Drano.
Oh man, thankfully I'm glad he did your program, because you're putting in that public service and you're doing, it's your job, but you're also protecting the community and stuff like that. And to have all that stuff into your body just wrecking havoc and affecting your quality of life and your longevity. So that's,
yeah, he was actually on disability.
He was on disability.
He was able to go back to work after this, yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope he keeps doing well. So I guess the final question that I like to ask everybody that comes on is, can you just lay out the health benefits that you get from using the sauna, which you've talked a lot about, but in a nutshell, what are your, give me 4 or 5 benefits other than detox that you've enjoyed from using your personal sauna?
Well, I could give you the biggest one is that I don't even have a primary care practitioner.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit.
I don't have any conditions that actually, I'm in the best perfect health that I've ever been, and I've been this way for a long time, mind you. But, and I want people to understand too, I live an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, I'm very careful about what I put into or onto my body. But 20% of the time, I want to go out with friends and things like that. We may have some wine with dinner. I don't care. It's just a case of as long as you're living mostly clean, you can get away with some things. And in fact, I've heard other experts in the health space talk about that too, But the thing is that for me, I do find it relaxing. I do find it is a great way to get my day going. And really beyond that, all I can say is that I stay healthy from doing sauna daily. And I do think that people need to really understand and appreciate better the power of sauna, especially in.
Awesome. That's a beautiful answer. I love it. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Dan?
Yeah, in fact, you already mentioned the website is getdetoxinated.com. I'm fighting with the SEO to be able to get Google to put me at the top of the list. But if you look up sauna detoxification using niacin, you'll at least find the book. And a lot of times people do find the website that way. But I do have a Facebook group, and it is also called Sauna Detoxification Using Niacin. So that's a group that's over now 11,500 people. So it's growing rapidly, and we do talk a lot about the different types of saunas and different types of ways to do the program and things like that. But if you want to work with me as your remote coach, you have access to a private group where actually we can talk more about the protocol itself. I don't like to cover questions in the main Facebook group simply because I have paid clients, and out of respect for them, I don't want to be giving away a bunch of free information when that site, that Facebook group is for people to learn about the program and all the benefits of it. So I think it's important to make that distinction. But yeah, so my website, getdetoxinated.com. The book, again, is Sauna Detoxification Using Niacin. And as backwards here, but anyway, I would look forward to talking with you, everybody. I do offer a free consultation at heal.me/detox. So if somebody wants to just reach out to me, they can always schedule at heal.me/detox.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Dan. I really appreciate it. I encourage everybody to go out there and check out his information. Go to the Facebook group, get the book, because there's a lot of information, and Dan shared a lot of it with us today, but there's a lot more out there, and there's a lot more to learn about the program and the benefits that we can get for it. So thanks for coming on, Dan. That's it for this episode. Yeah, absolutely. That's it for this episode of the Sweat Fanatic podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every other week. And until next time, get out there and sweat.